Welcome back, folks. Today is a brand new year in 2023. I know I haven't posted in a while, but I'm back. And today we'll be looking at a real-life example, a use case from a job request on UpWork.com. This job was posted back 6 months ago, and unfortunately I was not chosen to be hired to do this job. Nonetheless, I thought this would be a good use case for us to look at and try to solve this problem. So let's take a look at the requirements to see what we have to do. So we have a set of data listed from the client containing a bunch of URLs, and they would like to extract the first and last names. So looking at the raw data that was provided, we can tell that the LinkedIn profiles contain the first and last name separated by a hyphen usually. And sometimes they would also have the doctor in front of the first name. So what we want to do is extract Michael Dunnigan and ignore everything else as the first and last names. So the caveat, however, is that sometimes there is no hyphens. For example, this one and this one. These URLs, we would not be able to parse out the first and last name because you honestly have no way to do that. So the request is we would simply extract the first name if it's possible and grab the last name as well. If there is no hyphen, then we're going to flag as manual review. And if last name contains a middle name, then if there is a middle name, get the last name. So another example would be this one, where Teresa M. Antini, we would simply get Teresa and Tini. So that is the gist of the ask for this project. And the expectation is it shouldn't take more than 3 days, and it should be repeatable, being able to rerun it as an automated solution. So I'll be showing you how we can solve this problem relatively quickly in less than an hour on Microsoft Power Query. First things first, we're going to set up our connection to the raw data. So we're going to get data from the folder, which is where I stored the raw data, and we're going to bring in the raw data and manipulate it in the Microsoft Power Query editor. So I'm going to choose the sheet, press OK, and now the raw data will be brought in, and we're going to see the raw data here. So the client did ask us to populate only the first and last name, so I'm going to remove the original columns that I don't need because I'll be populating them myself. So we're going to remove columns, and we're going to extract the data from the profile, which is the profile column containing all of the LinkedIn URLs. So first things first, I will create a new custom column, bringing in only the data containing names. So the section I will call this new column as extract. I'm going to be bringing in everything in the profile, but what do I want to bring in? I want to bring in everything after the second backslash. So I'm going to write a formula using Text.AfterDelimiter to grab the string of text after the first delimiter. So I'm going to define the delimiter as in // and what this will do is simply bring in everything that's after this thing I call delimiter. So everything after the /in/ has been brought in. So this is what we have to work with. However, as the requirement originally states, we do not want the doctor as the first name. So I'm going to manipulate this original formula to account for that. So how do we do that? So we know that if it is a doctor, we should ignore that. So I'm going to write a conditional. If text contains, meaning if the text contains a certain value, we will do something else. So if text contains LinkedIn doctor, meaning if I see this in profile, Then I want to bring in everything after doctor. And otherwise, what we're going to do is simply bring in everything as we did before. So what this does is, as you can see, after I fix that, as you can see, because now we put in a conditional to look for if it contains a doctor in first string, then we're going to bring in the text after doctor. So now instead of Dr. Michael Dunnigan, we have Michael Dunnigan. Now we can first extract the first name relatively quickly and easily. So next, I'm going to call this the first name column. Simply, we're going to bring in, now we're going to use the extract column and bring in everything that is before the first delimiter. So what we're going to do is write another formula, each, let's say Text.BeforeDelimiter this time. So we're going to bring in this column extract, and we're going to bring in everything before the hyphen. And let's see what happens. So as you can see, first name is now populated with the first name. However, we see that there are some oddities such as Hollywood Smiles and Paul DeWeese. And again, the original requirement stated that because some of these URLs don't have the hyphen, this will not properly extract the first name. So we're going to adjust this formula to account for that. So if this, again, we're going to use Text.Contains. Text.Contains, if extract contains the hyphen, then we're going to bring in this. But if there is no hyphen, then we're going to just flag as manual review. So as you can see, the first name column is now accounting for everything that does not have a hyphen as a manual review. And everything else is bringing in the first name. But if you look at the first name column, it does look a little bit, doesn't look very nice because it doesn't have the capitalized. So what we're going to do is wrap what we brought in with Text.Proper. And what this does is capitalize each word. So simply wrapping in this, which would give us the first name, we're going to wrap this with Text.Proper, and then everything will be capitalized correctly. So now it looks really nice. We have the first name column. Next, we'll bring in the last name column. So now we are going to attempt to bring in, again, the extract column, and we're going to bring in the last name. So what we're going to do is this time use Text.AfterDelimiter to bring in everything after the hyphen. So what would happen if we simply just did that? Well, as you can see, we do bring in the last name, but there's a problem. If there's a middle initial, you're going to bring in the middle initial. So what I'll do this time is I'm going to manipulate the index in the formula. So what this means is that we're going to be looking at what I want to bring in is everything after the last name. The last name, as we know, is after the second hyphen relative from the end. So what that means is I know that if there is a middle initial, it will be still the second hyphen from the back. So what I'm going to do is utilize what we call a thing called RelativePosition.FromEnd. So what this formula does, this section will give me the second instance of a hyphen from the back. So that would be this one. That is the first hyphen. This is the second hyphen. when you put relative to 0, that means you're grabbing for the first hyphen. So if you do that, you'll simply get everything after the last hyphen. But if we change this to this value, 1, then you're going to get everything starting from the back, the second hyphen. So now we will solve for the middle initial problem. But we still need to extract the last name, right? And we also need to account for, once again, this thing where there is no hyphen. So what I'm going to do is simply write one more column to manipulate and get the correct last name. So this time we're going to manipulate the last name, and we're going to call out if Text.Contains hyphen, then we're going to get the extraction. We're going to extract what? Text.AfterDelimiter, well, before delimiter of the last name. Last name, which is the column that we just created. We're going to grab everything before the delimiter. Else, if it does not have a hyphen, then we're going to call this manual review, as we did before. Here we go. We now have the first and last names, and I forgot to wrap this on Text.Proper. There we go. Everything will be capitalized for the first letter. So now we have the first and last names extracted correctly. And everything that does not have a hyphen, well, is not there. We're going to be calling it as manual review as the client requested. So now we're just going to save and load. And there we go. We have the first and last names. And what I forgot to do was remove the columns that I don't need. Those were for computation only. So remove these columns from the extract, close and load. And now we're going to have, and that's it. We've extracted the first and last names correctly, and we flagged everything that doesn't have a hyphen, and we accounted for the middle initial problem. So now that we've accounted for all 3 bullets of the client's requirements, extracting the data correctly for first and last name, the job is complete. Well, I want to test my data. I want to go above and beyond what was expected of me. So I created a set of data myself, and I'm going to test my raw data by putting it into the import folder, and I'm going to refresh the data here. Refresh, and now I see what I brought in from my raw data, and we see the updated extract. So as we observe, there are certain additional problems we need to account for. First of all, being the MBAs and CPAs. Well, as you can see, the MBAs and CPAs are now appearing after the last name. So because we utilized a formula that grabbed everything after the second to last hyphen, now we're getting CPA and MBA as well as junior as the last names. So that's one problem that was not first solved from the client, but by creating an extract of my own, I'm able to see there are other problems. Let's take a look at this and how we can solve for this problem. Additionally, I see this example where Nicole Fernandez Valle does not have the last random string in her URL. So this is a problem because now the last name just is the last, is before the last hyphen. So essentially what we need to do is account for that as well. So we're going to go back into the Power Query editor and fix these problems. So I'm going to restore my computation columns and then go from there. So first things first, how do we solve for the CPA problem? I refresh my data so I can see everything that's updated. And we have MBA, CPAs, juniors. So the first thing that I would do is look at where that is appearing. So it is appearing in the last column, which is a extract from the extract column. So what I will do is I'm simply going to fix it here in the extract column. So because we have CPAs, juniors, and MBAs, and those don't really matter, we don't want them to appear, we're simply going to fix it by replacing these values. So I'm going to find every CPA instance of CPA and replace it with a hyphen. So replacing the CPA with one hyphen will simply alter the data to exclude the CPA. So now it looks just like a regular name without the CPA. And I'm going to repeat this process a number of times, unfortunately. Barring any CPAs, MBAs, whatever they have, remember to wrap it in the original hyphen, so you replace those hyphens with a pure hyphen. So MBA is now MBAs accounted for, CPAs accounted for, and we want to get rid of all the juniors as well. Replace those juniors in the last name, junior. And there we have it. Now, if we go back to the final column, we can see that instead of extracting CPA and MBAs, now we're correctly getting the last name. Very good, very good. So now how do we account for this Nicole Fernandez problem? So the next step is to, once again, add another column with another conditional. And we're going to call this last name. And what I want to check for is if first name is the same as last name, because that's the conditional. If first name equals last name, then what do I want to get? I want to get from the last name column, I just want the text after delimiter for last name. Delimiter being hyphen. So what does that do? If first name equals last name, then I want to get the value after the first hyphen from last name. Else, if not, then we're going to bring in, if it's, again, not the same, then we're just going to bring in last name. All right, let's see what happens. All right, it's looking a little bit better. So we have Mark Cuban, Nicole Valle. Well, now we have a hyphen. Without the hyphen, I mean, now we have this backslash. Okay. So now we're at this point. Let's go back to the last name and get rid of the slash as well. Place values, because we don't care about the slash. It doesn't really do anything. Remove that as well. Okay. So now Valet and everybody else who has no random string. Oh, we're going to have Text.Proper again. Do that. So now we have their proper first and last name. And then we don't need the computation columns any longer. So first name, last name, manual review, still there. But before we do that, we need to backfill those blank values with manual review. So if last name equals manual review, then manual review. Else if, okay, here we go. Okay, because this formula checked for getting the text after the delimiter, because there is no hyphen in manual review, that's why it was blank. So now I altered the conditional to check if last name column contains manual review. Then if it does, I'm going to enter manual review. Otherwise, I'm going to check if there is a match in the first and last name. If there is a match, then I'm going to utilize this column and get everything that's after the hyphen. So that's why I get valet. And then if that also does not match, then I'm simply just going to grab the name from the last name column. So that's how you read this. And finally, now we have this. I also forgot to remove the other extract. So now we truly have the first and last name columns. And I'm just going to adjust this to last name, close and load. And there we have it. We have first and last name correctly populated for each of these, accounting for juniors, CPAs, you name it. And now the ones that had double names, such as Nicole Fernandez in first and last name, we also account for those because of that custom column that we did. And because we have set certain items without a hyphen as manual review, that's also part of the requirement. So there we have it, a full case study showcasing how you can use Power Query to easily manipulate these text columns, splitting them as you see fit, manipulating them to get the value that you want. Plenty of different solutions, but this is the one that worked for me. So there we have it, folks. Hope you enjoyed this case study, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.